Welcome to this edition of Supply Chain Spotlight. I'm JT Engstrom with FreightWaves. Joined with me today is Bill Billiter, founder and CEO of ACERTUS, which is an auto hauler based out of St. Louis. Bill, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, JT. Thanks for having me. It's quite the honor.
Yeah, it's great to have you with us. I know we were introduced by a mutual friend, one who is very highly respected in the industry, and so it's great to have you on. And I think this will be a really interesting discussion. I know through personal experience, your space is a very unique one, and so it'll be fun to do a dive in and talk a bit about sort of both the market and your model and how you approach the market in a unique fashion. Can we first start by having a little bit of an introduction? Can you tell the audience a bit about your background, where you're from, how you got into the industry space, and then ultimately how you founded and started the company?
Perfect. Thanks again. As Bill Billiter, I'm co-founder and CEO of ACERTUS. I actually started back in this space back in 1997. I was going to college actually to be a special ed teacher and was doing some part-time work for one of the biggest wholesalers in the Midwest here based in St. Louis, driving cars to and from the auction, just making some extra money during college. And I saw a big opportunity in the space just because it was very fragmented. The technology wasn't there. So I approached the owner at the time and went to him and said, hey, I think there's a great business model here we can have here. You know, a lot of connections. We have the trucks, we have the driver base. I think there's something here that we can build a business on. So we basically took that business from zero to about 80 million in sales. Fast forward about 9 years. I really wanted to focus more on technology, so I needed a clean slate. So I left that organization and formed Metrogistics, which is a platform company today that's basically founded ACERTUS. So back in 2010, we had the industry's first iPhone app, which seems kind of silly today, but back in 2009, 2010, it was pretty cutting edge and kind of just feeds and fosters off our ability to lead with tech and what we do. So my partner and I at the time grew that business pretty nicely. We did a few acquisitions in 2014, 2016, 2017, 2018. And it was really interesting, and why I'm excited to be on the call today is the last mile space around home delivery on the dealership side is really taken off. The market's super frothy. And as we look at all the acquisitions we made and the way we go to market today, we are getting a ton of interest from customers, investors, and it's exciting because we're the only basically company on the planet can offer the 6 service lines we do. And as we think about our market position today, we are a technology-driven automotive and service company that's focused on solving complex problems throughout the life cycle of a vehicle. I know there's a ton of words there, but as you think about this space and the car haul space specifically, which makes up about 70% of our revenue today, it is very fragmented. The total addressable market is huge. Some have it earmarked on the used car space alone at $1 trillion. And so as we think about aggregating that stuff and creating a marketplace through technology, we're getting a ton of interest from the big digital retailers, the mega dealers, the small dealerships. So we're excited to really bring solutions to complex problems that they're faced with. Because you're thinking about traditionally the dealership, and I'll focus more on the dealership side, the remarketing space, is always wanting to get the dealer, the customers in the dealership. So that's how they always operated for many, many years. And as COVID's really brought stuff forward and a different mentality around safety and less foot traffic, these dealerships really had to pivot to that different model, and it plays right into our hands. We put businesses together and made investments and acquisitions throughout the years, knowing this was going to come. We saw Amazon kind of pave that way, and for us, we made the investments through 3 or 4 acquisitions that we made to really bring this together in a unified fashion that's tech-driven first.
Yeah, that's tremendous, and that's great context for the conversation. And it's a unique anecdote regarding the first iPhone app. That's a very early adoption in 2010 when you really think about the industry space. Although obviously a lot of consumers have them now, so it's semi-humorous, but unique nonetheless, and parlays well with your comment regarding the final mile space and how rapidly it's grown. Having that digital interface directly in hand is tremendous for a track and trace perspective and for making things friendly for those on the receiving side.
Absolutely.
And now, as we talk a little bit about your model and what makes you unique in the market is, on one hand, highly fragmented. On another hand, there's two really large players, and a portion of which deal with, some union labor relationships, and both of which are fairly asset intensive, although they also have owner-operator basis. As we talk about how you differentiate yourself in the marketplace as you seek to grow, can we talk through kind of your 6 lines of business, the primary line of business? Do you own the assets? Do you lease the assets? Do you utilize owner-operators? How do you think about optimizing the usage of those assets? Kind of where you think about kind of power dynamics in terms of densifying your network. There's a lot of different ways to cut this up, but I think it'd be interesting to do kind of a deep dive on that.
Yeah, so I want to maybe start with our relentless focus and investments over the years on data science has really brought this together and been a key differentiator for us for sure. And we offer a wide range of services, including vehicle transports like car haul and drive away. That's our biggest service line, is the car haul service line, as mentioned before, about 70% of our revenue. So think about like AutoNations of the world, the Sonic Automotive of the world. We provide all their shipping from either across the street, across the United States, inventory, home delivery, you name it. And other service lines are drive away, so physically getting in the car and driving the vehicle to someone's house. We do a lot of our fleet management company work, so think about Wheels, Donlin, fleet management companies that manage like big pharmaceutical companies. We handle all that logistics for them. As you can imagine, there's a lot of moving parts and people move and they reposition assets. So another service line we have is around the title and registration services. So we've got direct connections with the DMVs across all 50 states, down to the counties. We have connections to get the fees. We process the plates. We have vehicle storage. So we have a national footprint of 55 field locations throughout North America and into Canada. And then we provide care and maintenance services. So think about, we take a vehicle into our storage yard and using a windshield, we provide that. What really gets interesting here is that last mile home delivery play. So if a dealer in Florida sells a vehicle to someone in Phoenix, Arizona, they expect a little bit more service than just a car haul showing up and the guy in coveralls gets out and the car's dirty. Well, we have the ability to bring it to one of our hubs, do a wash and vac, fill it full of fuel, and home delivery of that on their schedule. So we can bring it to their home, their business. And what's great about our model, and the investments we made back in 2016 and 17, were businesses that have been doing this for 23 years. We're not experimenting with this. Our business model has been super hard to replicate just because of that footprint, the connection with the DMVs, which is pretty much impossible today to even start up, and layer in the field services and the storage footprints give us a competitive advantage for sure, which is why we have customers, I won't say lined up out the door, but a ton of interest because we're the only ones that can really bring that all together.
Yeah, and that's unique in terms of your commentary regarding the different elements of the market that you're simultaneously approaching, which gives you a very diversified approach to making sure that if one area of the market is not doing so well one year versus another, you can sort of counterbalance with different exposures. To that point, how do you think about the biggest growth areas of the market, how you want to think about positioning yourself within them, and then perhaps some other areas of the market that you're perhaps not in yet, but you're kind of looking at and feeling around and thinking about diving into?
Yeah, so the market is massive and very fragmented, and continue those trends as e-commerce evolves at the pace it is. This, I said earlier, the total addressable market alone in the used car space is around $1 trillion. And we have data from July, and again, back to the data science that we use, that there were less than 1% e-commerce penetration compared to like 16% e-commerce penetration in total retail. So as we look forward and seeing that I'm looking forward to that stat being updated in Q1, but most of the growth is coming from there and will continue to come there. If we think about the fragmented market on the car haul, I'll start there for a minute. Our carrier base, our total spend with our carrier base makes up less than 1%. So we Uberize our model, and we only do about 2 or 3% of the total addressable market on the used car space alone. So a ton of greenfield there, and we're leading with tech. The Amazons of the world have really, people want the product to come to them. They don't want to go to the product anymore. And our technology provides that transparency, that real-time updates, visibility. And then the backside of things too, with our carrier base and driver base and our courier base, we're tracking where they're at. We're seeing when they're going to deliver. We're using that data to our advantage. We can predict. We have an Uberization model where an order comes in, it goes out to who's in the first, who's ready for loads in that area, then it starts that chain from down there. So that's where we think our biggest growth is. And for us to really divest into a different service line, so to speak, we're always in the market for acquiring new businesses, but there's so much greenfield in front of us today, it's hard to look past that.
Yeah, that's tremendous. And that's very interesting to hear you talk about the call it digital influence that you've introduced into your business and how it would, I can imagine, help you gain leverage on driving one, asset utilization, two, your security of your network to ensure that the tractors are getting back to the desired location, and then three, perhaps leverage around your support of the driver, really, which is key and most critical asset of any rolling stock company. To that point, can we talk a little bit about drivers? And this is such a big topic in the industry space, and it's always interesting to hear from those who employ drivers how they think about kind of recruiting, retention, talent management. Of course, we're now in a pandemic period, so there's a health element, which is new in 2020, different than previous years, and also how you think about looking at drivers from potentially future acquired assets and whether or not they integrate into a culture. I think it's a very interesting subject.
Yeah, so we don't own any hard assets, so to speak, when it comes to like over-the-road car hauls. So we have a network of 6,500 carriers, which makes about 18,000 power units. And that could be hauling a one-car trailer or 9, 10-car hauler as well. And to my earlier point, our average load factor is at 1.2 across our network. So there's a lot of capacity. So we care about, like making sure that our carrier base is curated. But again, there's a huge capacity in our network that we can leverage. And as we digitize this and Uberize it more effectively and use AI and machine learning to our advantage, like that becomes it helps that solve some of those pain points because we know where assets are, we know where they're wanting to go, we're going to know their thresholds, their running times, all those things are going to play into place. And as I said before, only less than 1% of our total carrier spend makes up for our carrier network. So ton of greenfield there. So think about the opportunity in front of only 2 or 3% of the market today, only having 1.2 loads per factor and less than 1%. That's on our radar. And for us, we spend quite a bit of time in which we treat our carrier base and our driver base just as good as our customer base, maybe even a little bit better, to make them successful. We give them the tools, the technology. Because back when I drove a truck, it was $2 or $3 to fax a page from a truck stop. That's not very, it's not helping the customer or the carrier base, because a lot of times we put the paper upside down and fax it and have to do it twice, and then it's not real time, and all those things that go along with it. So we put tools that make the carrier successful. We give them basically a free TMS to run their business off of, and apps to make their business more successful, and the visibility that customers demand, and that level of transparency is there. We help them be more successful, which in return helps our dealer base, our OEM base, be more successful, and hence we're more successful.
Yeah, it's tremendous. So it's really run more like a marketplace in a very asset-light fashion, which is unique in your world. There are a few players who do it. I think you would be very, very advantaged in relation to kind of some of your peers, if you want to call it that, given the way you've approached the market. And furthermore, that gives you significant leverage for growth through that market, given a lot of the secular dynamics going on, both related to the fragmentation the availability of third-party assets, some of the challenges at the large full asset ownership carrier bases, and lastly, just due to a lot of the dynamic trends in the space, which really require flexibility in kind of the network.
Absolutely. And the biggest asset-based player in our space, I think it's 2,000 or 3,000 trucks, and they haul for us in our network. but you couldn't buy enough trucks, and you couldn't maintain that, the CapEx and the fuel and the driver base. And as we think about, the inventory levels the way they are, the dealerships are running a very low day supply. It used to be 30 to 45 days. Some are running 10 to 15 days. So they're going to need that one car to be filling in each day instead of waiting for a full truckload to come in, which plays right into our hand. The biggest asset players are going to be stretched a little thin as we think about as the market becomes maybe a little bit more fragmented with home delivery, because now we're delivering to people's houses, not taking full loads from a plant to a dealer. It's pretty much dealer to one person. So you might have 8 or 9 stops on one truck. And how do you optimize that network? It's through transparency, visibility, and just doing the right things in the marketplace.
That's tremendous. And then above and beyond that, if you wanted to talk about real greenfield opportunity, you could even think about ATVs, boat, recreational activity. There's so many different ways to cut the market for different, call it vehicle-related assets that need to move around the country. And so that's tremendous.
Yeah, there's other verticals we can go into for sure.
Bill, thank you very much for your time. This is a very interesting discussion. You have an incredible model. It's really unique, and I can see why you're growing so rapidly. And I think that's exciting to watch. It'll be exciting to see over time. I think it'll really well position you to continue to grow into the future. And certainly at some point, our mutual friend would be very happy to help you. And I'm sure there'd be a lot of opportunities for you.
I really enjoyed it, JT. Appreciate the time.
Bill Billiter, founder and CEO of ACERTUS. Thank you very much for your time. I'm JT Engstrom. This is Supply Chain Spotlight.